Finally, I sighed triumphantly, collapsing onto the sofa for the first time all day. The apartment was sparkling clean, dinner was on its way, and I had just managed to pull myself together with the last of my energy. My husband, Nikita, promised to be home in 40 minutes. I couldn't wait to see him. He'd been away on a business trip for a month and a half. For the past couple of years, he hadn't been sent anywhere. But there was no getting out of this work trip. It felt so strange being home alone, especially those first few days. I was just glad it was all over and hoped they wouldn't send him away again anytime soon. Right on schedule, 40 minutes later, I heard a commotion in the hallway, and then the front door swung open. I rushed to my husband with a joyful cry and threw my arms around him. He was just as happy to see me. We ended up staying up until 4 in the morning, unable to stop talking. We had missed each other terribly. Of course, we could have called regularly while he was away, but he said there were serious problems with the connection. Nikita would call me once a week for maybe 10 minutes, no more, just to say everything was fine. He'd send texts in the evenings, but our conversations were always short, 10 messages at most. And as for the internet, he said it was non-existent where he was, because we had stayed up so late. I slept in until noon. My stomach gave a long, drawn-out growl, letting me know it was time to eat. There was plenty of food left over from last night. Sushi, a few slices of pizza, and a couple of salads. Nikita wasn't in bed next to me. I could hear him clattering dishes in the kitchen. It seemed he hadn't waited for me. Perfect, I thought. We can have breakfast together. I lazed in bed for a few more minutes, then slowly washed up and went to the kitchen. Nikita was sitting at the table, sipping hot coffee. "Good morning," he said warmly, a soft smile on his face. "Good morning, sunshine." I noticed the table was empty. He must have decided to wait for me after all. I opened the refrigerator and saw that all the shelves were bare. Not believing my eyes, I closed it and opened it again. Nothing had changed. "Nikita, where's all the food?" I asked, bewildered. "Oh, you were sleeping for a long time," he mumbled, looking down at the floor. "Did you eat all of it?" "Yeah. Look, I don't mind, but that was enough food to last us the whole day." "How did you manage that?" "I don't know. I was just really hungry." "Did they not feed you or something?" "Not really," he said, averting his eyes. A pang of pity hit me. What kind of conditions had he been in? No reliable phone service, no internet, and now it seemed they barely fed him. I made a cup of coffee, then went to the store and returned with 2 enormous bags filled to the brim. It seemed like Nikita could never get enough to eat. He was devouring food in unbelievable quantities. Again, I didn't mind, and I know some people just have huge appetites, but that wasn't my husband. Nikita went to the gym regularly and always tried to eat healthy, moderate portions. I was the one who might overeat if something was especially delicious, but not him. He always knew when to stop. I hoped this ferocious appetite was just a temporary thing that would eventually fade. However, contrary to my expectations, it didn't go away. It stayed at the same intense level. Then I noticed something else strange. Nikita started making sounds in his sleep. And no, it wasn't snoring or talking. It was a sound like a low, guttural growl, the kind a dog might make when it's agitated. The first night, I didn't pay much attention to it, but when the growling returned every night, I started to seriously worry. I would wake him up, and every time he'd claim he felt fine and had no idea what I was talking about, annoyed that I had woken him in the middle of the night. After about a week of listening to these strange sounds, I started demanding that he see a doctor, but, as expected, he kept putting it off. The truth is, my husband hated going to clinics and hospitals. The only way he'd go is in an ambulance. So, I had no choice but to drop it and just watch to see what would happen next. It was the busy season at my job, so I started going to bed earlier than usual. My husband knew this and tried not to wake or disturb me. However, I'm a very light sleeper, and any little noise could wake me up. That night, the growling woke me again, but this time it sounded different. It started quietly, then grew steadily louder. The sound made me freeze. It wasn't exactly scary, more irritating. I had the feeling my husband was just messing with me. "Nikita, wake up," I said quietly. He didn't stir. "Wake up. Do you hear me?" I said, louder this time, shaking his shoulder. He didn't react at all. He just lay there with his eyes closed. That's when a real sense of dread crept over me. Either something was terribly wrong with him, or he had completely lost his mind. I had to get out of bed and go to the kitchen for some water. I filled a mug and, returning to the bedroom, splashed the cold water all over his face. That made him open his eyes, but his reaction was completely atypical. I expected him to jump up, wipe his face, and demand to know what the hell was going on. But he just opened his eyes. That was it. He didn't move from the wet bed, didn't ask me anything, didn't even rub his face. He just lay there, staring into nothingness. "Nikita," I pleaded, but there was no response. My hands started to shake with fear, and tears streamed down my cheeks without my consent. I quickly turned on the bedroom light, sat beside him, and shook him until he finally seemed to come to his senses. "Dasha, what's wrong? Why did you wake me up? Can't you sleep?" he said groggily, rubbing his tired eyes. "And why is everything so wet? Are you serious?" He just stared at me blankly. I couldn't hold it in any longer and let everything out. "What is wrong with you? Your stomach isn't a stomach. It's a bottomless pit. A normal person can't eat that much. And then there's that damn growling at night. It's not normal. Do you understand? And just now, I threw cold water on you, and you didn't even move." I buried my face in my hands and sobbed, whether from fear or helplessness. I don't know. "Dasha, hey, don't cry," he said softly. "I was just in a deep sleep, that's all." "No, it's not all. Promise me you'll go to the doctor." "I promise. I'll definitely go. Sometime this week, you'll see. If you don't go, if you let this continue, I'm filing for divorce. Do you understand me?" Of course I do. "Don't worry, I'll go," he assured me. A week passed, and my husband still hadn't gone to the doctor. He claimed his boss wouldn't let him off work, and on weekends, only private clinics were open, which he insisted were too expensive. I gritted my teeth and endured, constantly nagging him about it. I didn't actually want a divorce. I loved him. So I put up with all the strangeness until the day I discovered the spots on his body. One evening, he was taking a shower and apparently didn't hear me come into the bathroom. He was standing with his back to me and didn't see me enter, but I saw everything. His entire back was covered in dark brown spots. It was something I would have never noticed in daily life, since he always wore a t-shirt around the house and we went to bed at different times. "What's wrong with you?" My question startled him so much that he dropped the shower head, sending water spraying all over the bathroom floor. "What are you doing in here?" he asked, his voice laced with fear. "I just wanted to wash my hands," I stammered. Suddenly, he snapped. "Get out of here," he screamed. "Nikita," I said, "get out." My brain refused to process what was happening. He had never, ever screamed at me or spoken to me in that tone. In our entire life together, we had only ever had one real fight. When the reality of the situation finally sank in, I went to the kitchen, locked the door, and covering my face with my hands, I began to wail. What was happening to us? A terrible thought dawned on me. He must have caught some disease on his business trip. But what if someone had infected him? What if it was an STD? Maybe he'd been with a prostitute and was now afraid I would find out. Or maybe he had a mistress. We didn't speak for the rest of the day. I was completely devastated. I have no idea what was going through his mind, but his silence was crushing. It was strange that he didn't even try to comfort me. I lost my appetite completely. I didn't want to eat or drink. He, on the other hand, didn't deny himself anything. He ate like there was no tomorrow, just like usual. Later that evening, we had another confrontation, another fight. I walked into the kitchen to a scene of chaos. An empty bread bag lay on the table next to a pile of dirty dishes, and amidst this mess sat Nikita. He was just sitting on a chair, staring blankly at the wall. I would have left him alone, but there was one problem. In his hand, he held a bottle of drinkable yogurt, which was steadily pouring out onto his pants and the floor. "What is wrong with you? Have you completely turned into an animal?" I screamed as loud as I could. "Why are you still trying to eat if you're already full?" But it was like he couldn't hear me. He just kept staring at the same spot. I snatched the bottle from his hand, threw it into the sink, and slapped him hard across the face. He immediately came to life, grabbing my wrists and squeezing them with such force that tears welled up in my eyes. "Let go! You're hurting me!" I cried out. Nikita just stood there, impassive, and squeezed harder. "Nikita, what are you doing?" I whispered, looking directly into his eyes. What I saw there made me lose my voice for a few seconds. His eyes were filled with pure malice. He was practically incinerating me with his gaze, and for the first time, I was truly scared of him. A knot of fear formed in my stomach and crawled up my throat, growing with each passing second. I wanted to curl into a ball and hide in the darkest corner. In that moment, I thought he was going to kill me. But then, just as suddenly, his expression changed. He looked at me with confusion and fear. "Dasha," he said, bewildered. "Are you insane? Are you completely insane?" I screamed in his face, then ran to the bathroom and locked the door. It was over. I had to get a divorce. There was no other way. I didn't know what this was, and I had no idea how to fight it. He refused to see a doctor, which meant I had no other choice. For several days, I wrestled with myself. On one hand, divorce seemed like the most logical solution, but on the other, I didn't know for sure what was happening to him. What if he needed my help? What if this was far more serious than it seemed? One thing was clear. He was definitely hiding something from me. That's when I decided to check his phone, something I had never done before, but the situation demanded it. What if he was on drugs? My mind was racing with possibilities. It was as if Nikita had read my mind. He suddenly became obsessively protective of his phone, taking it with him into the shower, to the toilet, and even hiding it under his pillow at night. With a heavy heart, I made the final decision to file for divorce. But first, I wanted to find out something, anything, that could explain this. Everything had gone wrong after his business trip. Maybe his colleagues knew something. I decided not to bother his teammates and to go straight to his boss. I had been to a few company parties with Nikita and had met everyone, including his supervisor, Kirill. He seemed like a reasonable guy. He'd even been to our house a couple of times. I hoped he could shed some light on the situation. I had his number saved in my contacts, just in case. Now, that just-in-case moment had arrived. He didn't pick up right away. I was about to hang up when, at the last second, he answered. "Hello? Hello, Kirill. This is Dasha, Nikita's wife." "Oh, Dasha, hi. Good to hear from you. How are you?" "Not so great, to be honest." "What's wrong?" "Please, understand I have no one else to turn to. The thing is, My husband has been sick ever since he came back from his business trip, but he won't tell me anything. I was hoping you might know something. Maybe something happened there?" My question was met with silence. At first, I thought the call had dropped, but then I heard him breathing. "Dasha, I like you. I really do. But I have no idea what you're talking about, or how I'm involved in this." My mind immediately jumped to male solidarity. Either he was covering for Nikita, or they were in on something together. But I wasn't going to give up that easily. "What do you mean?" was all I could manage. "What do you mean? What do I mean? First of all, what am I supposed to know? And second, how would I know anything about his work trips? What? What does that mean?" Kirill laughed, then added, "That's what I want to know from you. How would I know how things are with his job now?" "Wait," I said, a cold realization dawning on me. "Did you quit?" He went quiet again, and then his voice turned serious. "No, I didn't quit. Nikita quit. More than 2 months ago, I think." "He didn't tell you?" Kirill's words echoed in my head. Quit more than 2 months ago? That meant there was no business trip. So where had he been? It had to be a mistress. That scumbag. Are you serious right now?" "Completely. Why would I joke about that?" He was right. "I understand, Kirill. Thank you. Have a good day." "You too. If you have any other problems, call me. I'll help if I can." "Okay. Thanks so much. Don't mention it." What his former boss told me gave me a lot to worry about. If he had quit months ago, then he hadn't been on any business trip. That much was clear. But then where was he now? It was my day off, but Nikita had woken up at 7 in the morning and left, supposedly for work. In fact, he left and came back at the same time every day, Monday through Friday. So what non-existent job was he going to? Or had he found a new one and just not told me? Fine, whatever. He obviously didn't consider me part of his family anymore. I was almost 100% certain he had another woman. Everything seemed clear, but for my own peace of mind, I needed proof of his infidelity. That night, Nikita passed out earlier than usual and forgot to hide his phone. I wonder what he was so engrossed in, I thought bitterly. Texting his new lady? I had managed to glimpse his password once, so I unlocked the phone without any trouble. But I didn't find any other woman in his phone. What I did find was a very peculiar group chat with about 50 members. At first, the messages made no sense. In the most recent ones, they were discussing how productive their day had been. I thought maybe this was his new job. But the more I read, the more horrified I became. They were talking about welcoming new members into their collective and how they had implanted something into them. I had to reread the message several times to make sure I understood it correctly. I initially thought they were talking about parasites or some kind of scientific experiment, but I was wrong. The chat members were discussing new life forms that they believed humanity must recognize. They claimed that breeding these life forms was the only way to save humanity from the apocalypse. I felt my muscles tense and an invisible hand squeeze my throat. What was this gathering of lunatics? And what in the world was my husband doing among them? I had to talk to him to get to the bottom of this. Maybe they had promised him a ton of money to participate, and he had fallen for it. It's going to be okay, I told myself. The main thing is to stop this now, to cut off all contact with these people. With these thoughts, I got into bed, intending to wake him up. But I couldn't. Something was happening to his body. It was as if a hand from inside him was pushing against his stomach, like when a pregnant woman feels her baby kick. But this was obviously not that. Suddenly, he sat bolt upright in bed, as if a puppeteer had yanked him up by invisible strings. He sat there with his eyes closed, rocking back and forth. I wanted to shake him, but a voice inside me screamed that I absolutely should not. In the next instant, The skin around his stomach began to stretch in a bizarre way, and then something long and oblong pushed out from within his body. It was truly grotesque. The skin couldn't take the strain and burst open. Blood splattered across the bed, a few drops landing on me. From my husband's torn open abdomen, a hand emerged, followed by a second one. I just sat there, my mouth agape, watching as something literally crawled out of my husband as if he were a goddamn chrysalis. The lights were off, and the only illumination came from a single, dying streetlight outside, so it was hard to see everything clearly. But what I did see that night will be burned into my memory for the rest of my life. The creature pulled itself out of his abdomen and shed Nikita's skin like a suit. It sat hunched over the remains of his body. The face of the newly hatched horror was covered in deep wrinkles. 2 gaping holes were where its nose should have been, and black pits marked the place of its mouth and eyes. A second later, 2 red dots glowed from within the eye sockets. Those must have been its eyes. It stared at me without blinking. In that moment, my body acted on its own. I wasn't even aware of what I was doing. With all my might, I jabbed my long, sharp fingernails directly into the creature's eyes. It let out a shriek and clawed at its face. That gave me an opening. I scrambled for the door, somehow managed to grab my keys, and locked the damn thing inside the apartment. Deafening bangs echoed from inside the apartment, though they stopped almost as quickly as they started. But those few thuds were enough for the neighbors to call the police. I was hysterical, unable to string 2 words together. My husband, of course, was dead, and I was immediately suspected of his murder. They took me into custody as the prime suspect. It wasn't surprising. I was standing on the landing in nothing but my nightgown, covered in blood. The creature, meanwhile, had conveniently vanished. I was released a short time later. However, after certain circumstances of the case came to light, they never told me exactly what those circumstances were, but the lead investigator did tell me something else. They had found the cult. I don't know how a group that large, responsible for several deaths, had managed to stay hidden for so long, but that was probably why they let me go. These people worshipped some ancient life form, performing sacrificial rituals. It was likely during one of these rituals that some ancient, incomprehensible evil was implanted into them. How my husband got involved, I'll never know. One of the creatures had hatched from a female cult member and killed her child. In total, they had implanted these parasites into 4 people. 2 of them had been found. As for the one from my apartment, I have no idea where that fiend island. When the police arrived, the window in our bedroom was wide open. For now, it's managed to hide. But how long can it stay hidden from the world without harming anyone else?